Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Tony. Woo.
Hello, and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. I'm really excited for you to listen to this next interview. It is with a good friend of mine, Alix Turoff. She is killing it on Instagram and just overall being a really, really awesome registered dietitian. I'm super excited for you guys to hear from her. Proud to call her a friend of mine and to share a space with her. I love her energy. I love all that she does. She's a really, really, really good at what she does. So if you're not already following her on Instagram, I know you're going to want to after this. We talk all about reverse dieting. We talk about fiber, the importance of it, but could you be eating too much or the wrong sources? And we just have a conversation. It's really, really interesting to hear her journey growing up and now being a registered dietitian and helping other people with weight loss in a flexible way. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me, tipswithtony@gmail.com, or message Alix directly as well. If you're not already subscribed to the podcast, please subscribe. It allows other people to find it every Monday and every Wednesday. So without further ado, here's the episode with Alix Turoff. Enjoy. Hi, Alix. How are you?
Hi, I'm well. How about you?
Great. So excited to have you here.
Me too. I'm excited to be here.
It's going to be an awesome episode. So I know a lot of my followers already follow you. I feel like we have very similar communities. So I know they're super excited to hear a little bit more about you, probably in greater detail than when they just get it in pieces on social media.
Sure.
So why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself, say who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do.
Okay, so my name is Alix Turoff. I am a registered dietitian and personal trainer. And like Tony, I am a virtual nutrition coach. So I work with people one-on-one. We focus on a lot of the same things. So as you've probably been listening to Tony for a while, you might hear that we share a lot of the same philosophy, but I focus on a flexible approach to eating. So taking into account the whole person and the whole person's lifestyle and really accommodating all of their needs, from their exercise to their sleep, to their moods, to their social life, and figuring out how we can make nutrition work for their life rather than having it the other way where we're trying to fit your life into some cookie cutter nutrition plan.
Totally. So great. Yeah. And the reason why I wanted to connect with you is I think people know at this point, if they're listening to the podcast, like, there's no magic pill or potion. I'm not going to have somebody on that's going to give them, the solutions to everything that they think is the answer. But they're going to be able to figure it out with the tools and tips that we give them. So I think I want to definitely hear a little bit about your story, but I did want to kind of touch on, you literally just posted something on Instagram that I loved so much. And it was a visual about like what people think they need versus what they actually need. If we could just jump right into that, I would love to talk about what was on that, and what do we think? How can we get people to lean towards the things they actually need?
Sure. So this is big. You'll see a lot of different things on Instagram, and it's really easy to sorry, my dog, and I will get him quiet for a second. It's really easy to see something and think like, oh my God, should I be doing that? Will this help me get better results? Do I need to be intermittent fasting or putting butter in my coffee or food combining? And every day it seems like there's something different. Mm-hmm. And yes, there are definitely things that you could be doing that might make eating healthy easier or preferable for you. But at the very basis of all of this is some pretty common principles, which is just about the quality of food you're eating. So, making sure that we're filling our plates with fruits and veggies and whole grains and all that stuff that most of us know. And then the other aspect is really looking at what are your personal goals? Is it weight loss? Is it weight maintenance? Is it digestive issues? Mm-hmm. Is it energy or performance or muscle gain? And a lot of my audience is primarily interested in weight loss. So that is where I kind of govern that's where I sort of put my content. But at the same time, a lot of the things that will promote weight loss will promote overall general health as well. Mm-hmm. So, and that is to say that the person needs to lose weight, mm-hmm. right? There are a lot of people who maybe want to lose weight, but it might not be appropriate for them. Mm-hmm. In which case, all of these things might not help promote weight loss. And maybe, eating in a way that, some people will oftentimes undereat, and they'll come to us and we'll give them maybe like a calorie goal or a guideline, and they'll say, there's no way that I can do that. I'm going to gain weight. But what they're not seeing is, or they're not maybe, whether they're not seeing or being honest with themselves is that they're under eating, and it's leading them to binge or overeat somewhere else. So really it comes down to figuring out a way to fuel your body in a consistent way that works for you, where you can actually stick to it for longer than a few days or even a few weeks.
Yeah. That's a really, really good point. So there's the basis there, I think, is calories that are sustainable. Because I think a lot of people want to lose weight really quickly. So they think, okay, the lower the calories, the better. But you just made a really good point, right? It's if someone has a calorie goal of like 1,200 and they can follow it for a couple of days, but then that leads them to overeat, say maybe 3,000 calories or 2,800 calories, whatever, on the weekend, and they end up either maintaining their weight or gaining their weight, they might be better off bringing those calories up to maybe like 1,500 or 1,600, and that's a little bit more sustainable.
Yeah, and I think the other thing with that is that most times when people do that is that when they hit that 2,800 calorie day on the weekend, they feel so bad about themselves. Mm-hmm. So it's not something where they're purposely, under eating to make room for the weekend. They're trying so hard to under eat, and it's backfiring, and then they feel like a failure. Mm-hmm. So it's, people do calorie cycling and they have different ways. There's different ways to structure your week. You don't necessarily have to eat exactly the same amount every day, but you do want to feel like you're more in control of it and not like the food is getting control of you. And that often happens when people undereat all week and the weekends become this big binge. Even if it does promote weight loss, it affects your mental health.
Yeah, which is really true. That's a really, really good point. I'm curious because we didn't really get to talk about it, but like, where did you experience this personally when it came to like restricting calories or maybe falling for the things that you saw on the internet? What made you want to do that? What made you help people?
I think like many of us, I did experience this personally. I was younger though. So I was in high school when I first kind of set out to figure out how to manage my weight. So I was what you would call probably very normal, but maybe a little bit chubby. But I felt gigantic at the time. So I was maybe 14 or 15 and looking at all of my friends, and I just felt like I was the biggest girl around. And I also had like a victim mentality about it, that why couldn't I eat pizza like everyone else? Or why couldn't I just not have to exercise or anything like that? I just didn't really understand it. And my mom actually has a pretty healthy relationship with food. So it wasn't that she always had me on diets. I never did a diet with a name in my life. So I never did Weight Watchers, never did Atkins. I just restricted calories because that was how I started, and that was all that I knew. And it worked really well. So what happened was one day I remember being at Century 21, which is a department store. And my mom, I was trying something on, and she would say this a lot. And I took it in a way that was reflective of how I felt about myself. But she would say, well, why not? Maybe you want the next size. It might fit better, or might flatter you better. And I took that as, well, you're fat or you're going to be gaining more weight. So I just remember this one day, for whatever reason, it sticks in my head, of saying, that's it. I am going on a diet tomorrow. And I did. And so I started losing weight slowly, and then it came off faster. But my young mind, I was eating less. And so if I wanted to lose more weight, I would just have to eat even less, especially when I got down closer to my goal weight and it became harder to lose the weight. So to me, food and calories just meant getting fat and not being happy with my body. And that's sort of what my association with it was. So then I went to a dietitian. So my parents were very supportive, and I was probably like 16 at the time. And she handed me a meal plan, and she just said, okay, here, go do this. It's not personalized to me in any way.
How old were you?
I was 16.
Oh my God, that's really upsetting.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to that. But
yeah. She said, here's a meal plan. I'll see you in a month. You know, it's very different from the way we work with clients, and it was not personalized. It wasn't realistic to what I was doing. I was just very, very fearful of food at this point. But I was also sick of like binging and restricting and going through that cycle, because I really was in that cycle. I wasn't purging. I was definitely over exercising at the time, but I was not in a healthy cycle. I was very scared of food.
And your mindset, yeah. Like, I think that's the biggest thing that we need to think about. Is like, regardless of your actions, it was the way you were going about them. You know, you could have someone going to the gym and eating right. In their mind, they're beating themselves up, or in their mind, they're like, oh, wow, this feels good. And this is how I want to, like, you know, it's always about what's up in your head. Right.
And that's why if weight loss and advice really has to be so individual, because what could be healthy for some person could be really unhealthy for someone else. Mm-hmm. So like we say, like for someone eating the slice of pizza is more healthy than not eating it.
That's a really good point. That's a really, really good point.
And for me at that time, that was like, for me, eating a slice of pizza was like this big Herculean accomplishment. Mm-hmm. And my parents would have been so proud of me if I ate that. So it comes like the coin kind of flips. So let's see. So that was in high school, and I kind of half-assed it a little bit. I was, I tried to do it, but I was alone. Like no one was really following up with me or talking me through the fact that it was normal to feel scared of rice at that time, because I was. So I don't know. I guess I sort of put a Band-Aid on it. And then I went away to college, and I was dealing with just like eating in the dining hall and drinking for the first time and all of that stuff. And I think I was still not confident in myself at all, but I just dealt with those feelings of like feeling kind of terrible about myself all the time, I guess. Mm. And it was fine. Like I functioned, and, I was able to go out to eat and order something, but I feel really guilty after. I just guess I thought that was normal, that was just going to be me for the rest of my life. And then like sometime with like my freshman year, I somehow stumbled upon Lane Norton on the internet, like some bodybuilding.com forum. And I started reading about reverse dieting. And because he works with a lot of bodybuilders, and I never was a bodybuilder or competed in anything, but my metabolism and my intake was that of someone who was ready to get on stage next week. I was maybe eating like 1,000 calories a day, and I wasn't losing weight at that point.
Right.
So I was like, whoa, this concept is intriguing. I think that I can slowly add food back week by week in like a very slow and controlled way that felt safe to me at the time. So I kind of set out on doing that by myself. And at that time, I did have like a pretty good understanding of calories and macronutrients just from like tracking, and I was obsessed with it, reading. So I was able to do it by myself. And I set the goal of like adding 50 calories a day to my diet, and each week increasing that. And I wasn't gaining weight. I was feeling so much better. I think like my hormones, rebounded, and my mood was stabilizing and all of that stuff. And just like, I realized that I was under eating for so long, and that's why I was feeling terrible. It wasn't serving me.
Right. Yeah. So it wasn't helping your mental health, but also on a physiological level, you said your hormones are screwed up.
Yeah.
I think that, it's interesting. Surprisingly, I've never even talked about reverse dieting before. So maybe we should talk about that a little bit more. I think that's a great topic of conversation. And you're right. A lot of people, it's very interesting. You also said something. You said, I never followed a diet. I was never on anything that had a name, but you kind of just restricted on your own. And I think a lot more people can relate to that than because they hear carbs are bad, or they hear they should be counting calories, or they hear they should be eating more protein, or whatever it is. Like they hear all these things, and like they don't want to quote like be on a diet or like follow something rigid because they also hear that's not great. But they're still taking in all of these things and then somehow creating something on their own that is restrictive. So the underlying theme is restriction, and many times it's true that you'll hear people say like, I don't think I'm eating enough, but I'm afraid of eating more because I'm already eating so little and the scale's not moving. So therefore I feel like the only answer is to eat less.
Right.
So maybe let's talk a little bit more about like what happens, I guess, when your calories are too low for a long period of time, and like what is reverse dieting, and like why do we implement it, and what does it do to your body?
Sure. So I guess I'll start with maybe who would be a candidate for it or why we would implement it. Mm-hmm. And I honestly, many of my clients are candidates for it. They're the type of women who they're not eating uncontrollable amounts. Some people are like they're binging, but they're really under eating for so long. They're not seeing the results that we would expect from eating that amount of calories. And they are having some kind of negative side effect from it, whether that's binging, getting into that cycle, or losing their periods, or thinning hair, or, like it's actually, gut issues, all kinds of things like that. And a real fear around food. There's always that mental aspect of it too, because I whether there's studies on this, there's starvation studies, but when you undereat for that long, you can't be unaffected by that. Like it becomes so mental. Food becomes the only thing that you can think about. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And especially when you're preoccupied with your body too, because you're not happy with your body, even if you're at your lowest weight, you don't feel good about yourself.
Right.
So when all of those things are in place, that's when, and someone's coming to me and they're like, yeah, I'm eating 1,100 calories and I'm not losing weight. Probably there are coaches out there who would say, okay, we got to go down to 1,000.
Yeah.
Which is scary.
Yeah.
Or we got to go to 900, or you got to cut out the snack. But to me, that's something like, if you're eating that little and you're not losing weight, something's got to give.
Right.
And so that's when we start to add.
Right. Okay. So a couple things there, let's just say. So some people, if you're not eating enough calories, and you're not seeing weight loss, you're obviously not going to feel great.
Yes.
You're also not going to be happy because you're not going to see progress.
Yep.
So yes, the mindset would be, okay, eat less and then it'll work. But even if it did work, you would be miserable, right? If you're pretty happy, imagine now decreasing more, restricting more, you're obviously going to be less happy. But then at the other side, there's that fear of adding calories. So how do you help someone through that?
Yeah. And I think what you said, even if it did work, and it's because it can work on paper. Yeah, it makes sense. We cut out more calories and you'll lose weight. But try cutting out calories when you're that low and see what happens. Like almost always leads to some kind of overcompensation through binging or, like the weekend overeating. There's also like hormonal compensations that happen and metabolic adaptations that happen where you start moving less. So your NEAT activity starts to go down because your body can't expend that much energy. Your workouts suffer. So there are those real physiological things that happen. But what I say to most people is if you could follow that kind of diet, you wouldn't be here now, because we can't follow those types of restrictive diets. We have things in our bodies kick in to kind of save us from that.
Right.
And that's why we start binging or why we start overeating sugar or any of those things, because our bodies are craving nutrients.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And that's something else that I feel like I've touched on before. Whether you're under eating, overeating, regardless, when you're not eating the right types of food, so high quality, nutrient dense foods in a balanced way, you're going to have cravings. So both ends of the spectrum are not healthy, which is why you and I both focus so much on balance and figuring out how do we get that middle ground to reduce cravings. Because if you're restricting, they're going to come up. But also if you're like overeating and not eating high quality nutrient dense foods, your body is not craving out of hunger. It's craving out of like, no, I want vitamin A and vitamin C. I don't want sugar, but that's how I'm making you feel. That's how I want it. That's how
Just blood sugar drops and all of that stuff. Yeah.
So, okay. So you mentioned like on your own, you kind of did it where you slowly started to add calories back in. What would you advise to someone who wanted to do a reverse diet on their own?
I would first say you definitely, you want to go slow. So you definitely want to go slow. So I would say like 50 calories a day, adding that on top of what you're doing, because you're going to have to be, what you're going to really have to be on top of is the scale might change. And if that happens, you have to be mentally prepared for that change. And also to know that the scale can change temporarily. It could go up a few pounds and down a few pounds. And just to know what those fluctuations mean and be okay with them. That's really important, because you can't, oh my God, I'm at 1250 calories now and I gained weight. You didn't gain weight. You didn't gain weight. So you have to kind of know, you have to be comfortable with knowing how your body works and really be able to remind yourself constantly that you're doing the right thing for yourself. Yeah. And that's hard to do without a coach.
Yeah.
It really is. But you can do it. There are, I would say, find resources like someone like Layne Norton, who really laid out, this is what you should expect. You might gain a few pounds at first. You might have water fluctuations, and all of these types of things. So be aware that this might happen so you don't freak out if it does.
Right, because as you add calories, you're adding more food, which could potentially be just you're adding more foods. Maybe there's sodium in there, or your body re-regulating itself. It's not used to having to digest all of that food. And so now your weight might go up a little bit, but it's actually going to help you if you want to continue to lose weight. It's going to pull you out of that plateau so we can kind of reset, and then you can like healthily lose weight again.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, that some people will actually start to lose weight as they start adding calories. I mean, that makes it a lot easier, because then you're like, wow, okay, I could do this. I'm eating more and I'm losing weight. So that's always great. And I have clients where when that happens, I'm like, oh yes, because it makes it a lot easier to coach someone through that. But that's not always the case. What happens for many people is when they are undershooting on their calories, let's say they're aiming for under 1200 calories and they're never sticking to it. When you increase their goal to 14 or 1500 calories, it's not that, oh, they're eating more and they're losing weight. No, they're just not overcompensating somewhere else now.
Right. Yeah. I think, So I think that's one thing I've noticed in, I don't know, like just diet culture or the internet or everything. It's like, there's a lot of these like claims about like how your body would react if, but despite what the science says of like how your body would react on a metabolic level, like there's a practical level that gets overlooked so much that I think that's what we need to focus on more. So it's like, doesn't matter what the science says, that there are plenty of studies about like putting your body in starvation mode and how that's so bad and all that. But it's like from a practical level, like how consistent are you if this is your goal versus if we changed your goal and made it more realistic for your lifestyle?
Yeah. And I think that's probably the key to all of this, is that it's one thing to see it in a textbook. It's one thing if like there's a study that showed it, but when you put it into practice for your own life, how do you react, or how does that change things for you? Because maybe keto does work for some people, and on paper it shows that there can be weight loss from it. There can be metabolic improvements. But is that practical for you when you actually implement it, when all of the other factors of your life come into play?
Yeah. Definitely. So something just came to me because I know that you, and I'm not going to say any names or anything, but I know you used to work for someone who believes in like fiber, and fiber is important. So I wanted to say that, but I feel like we also come into, I don't know if you want to call it competition, or I don't know. Our biggest challenge is like certain foods are like given like what they call the health halo, right? So keto, it's like, that's the way, or like paleo, that's the way. And I think there's, in New York City, I don't know anybody else around there if they hear this, but like fiber is like, has this beautiful health halo. And it's a great thing because I actually love fiber. I think fiber is amazing. And I think most people aren't eating enough of it. But somehow we can still take something that's good for us and make it like, bring it to the extreme and make it to a point where maybe it's not so great. So I would love to hear, like, if you want to just maybe talk about like fiber, the importance of it, and like how much is enough, how much is too much, and like when does it become unhealthy?
Yeah, I think that, like you said, with social media especially is a really good way of taking something amazing and making it super extreme.
Yeah.
Because everyone thinks like the more the better of anything. Mm-hmm. And that's not always the case, especially when we look at our current food environment, which is there's a lot of processed food. I always say food processing is not inherently a bad thing. It's actually an amazing thing. Yeah. It's what keeps us safe. It's what keeps food available to us. And there are many processed foods that it doesn't automatically mean bad. But when we start taking foods that don't necessarily have fiber in them and adding it in, so something like, gummy bears that have 28 grams of fiber, that's not there naturally. Right. And that works very differently than a cup of raspberries in your body. So I'd say, what are the importance of fiber? So fiber is the indigestible part of the carbohydrate. So you can only get it through carbohydrates. So on something like keto, a very low carb diet, you're getting fiber through the vegetables that you're eating, but it is really hard to get without eating more carbohydrates. Something like beans are a great source of fiber, but they are higher in carbohydrate than other protein sources. So you are investing in carbs to get the fiber. And what do? So they keep us full because they help to slow down the blood sugar spike. So they keep your blood sugar a little more stable. They help your body to eliminate waste. So have more regular bowel movements, which also has implications for colon health. So it could, there are health benefits to fiber in reducing risk for colon cancer and those types of things. Also can help reduce cholesterol because it acts like a sponge and it pulls cholesterol out of the body. So it has that benefit. But it can also have negative effects, especially to people who, and I mean, you could probably speak to this with your most recent health stuff that you had going on. If you have certain types of IBS, you could be very sensitive to high FODMAP foods, and many high FODMAP foods are very healthy foods and very high in fiber, but they can really negatively affect you. And you shouldn't ignore that because someone on Instagram is telling you that you need more of it.
Very good point. Very, very good point. So so we need fiber, but you're saying is to get it from whole sources, which are usually carbohydrate rich sources. Mm-hmm. So it kind of goes against the low carb diet trend.
Yeah.
However, we don't want to be mindful of that. We're not getting it just because a package like, we hear fiber is good for us, so let me get these crackers because they added fiber to them. It's like, no, let me get these crackers because I like them. Mm-hmm. Because they're healthy and because they also give me that crunch that I'm looking for. And I'm also eating fruits and vegetables with it. And I'm not just depending on these crackers to get me my fiber intake.
Yeah. And that's what I have my clients focus on is I want you to get, if you can get 25 grams of fiber per day from whole foods and you want to have a little extra, like a low carb wrap that has fiber in it, go for it. But Institute of Medicine recommends 25 grams of fiber per day for women, 38 grams for men. Where like some people come to me eating 80 grams of fiber from added sources, which is insane. And they're also super bloated.
Yeah.
They're having crazy like cravings because they're not actually eating any real carbs that break down into sugar in the body. Mm-hmm. So they feel like they're eating carbs, but they're not, which is sometimes good and helpful when you're trying to lose weight, but overdoing it is not necessarily better. So, people will argue, well, there's no published, negative or adverse effects from eating that much fiber. They'll look at like vitamin and mineral absorption can be affected, but really what's affected is digestion and the fact that you're now misplacing other foods in your diet because you're only eating these carbs that have all this added fiber.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing. I always tell people, like, broccoli is very good for you, right? But if that's like the only vegetable you eat, you're probably not getting enough of something else. So usually what happens is we want to find that balance because too much of one thing is not enough of something else. And that's the lesson there. It's not that one's better than the other. We just, for whatever reason, I don't know, society just wants to find like that one thing, but there's never that one thing.
Yeah. Another thing, and this, people really don't like to hear this and they get very upset, but soluble fiber. So there's insoluble fiber and soluble fiber. And honestly, if you vary your food sources, you should be fine getting the right amount of each. But soluble fiber is mostly in like the added fibers that you'll see. So like the gaur gum or the chicory root, which is inulin, or what are some other popular ones? Those are like the two popular ones that you'll see added to foods a lot. But if you're in a calorie deficit, so if you're limiting your food, the gut bacteria can take soluble fiber and ferment it into short chain fatty acids, which can then be used by your body as calories. So, because your body, you can't outsmart your body. Your body has, different mechanisms that can use to make it run more smoothly. And if it sees like, oh, we have this fiber that I can now ferment, we can use these short chain fatty acids and we can pump it to the mitochondria, it's going to do that. So it's not just calorie free. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of the reason why people will eat it. There's also a lot of issues with the FDA food labeling. And there's a lot of loopholes in how you can label fiber on the food label, what counts as fiber, what has to contribute it to carbs and calories and all of that stuff. So if you're only eating a food because it's high in fiber and low in carbs, but you don't really like it, that's where the problem is.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. And yeah. We'll just end it with that. I agree. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I definitely agree. Okay. So I feel like we talked about a lot of things. We talked about reverse dieting. I think also too, if you're working with a coach that's someone who's hands-on. So I think that's another thing that I definitely early on in my career as a dietitian, I would always, even when I was a co-host on the Jim Woods podcast like 3 or 4 years ago, and I was not a new dietitian, but I think I was like a dietitian for 3 or 4 years or whatever. But I would always just say, make sure you get a dietitian, make sure you get a coach, make sure you don't do it on your own. But you just put a really good example of you did have a dietitian when you were 16. And that's a credentialed nutrition professional who gave you a meal plan, which is the same thing we tell people, be careful who you work with because they might just do that. And we want to work with someone who's credentialed that has a background as if that means that they're going to then give you something sustainable, but you just clearly stated that not everybody's out there is doing that. And there's some great nutrition coaches that don't have their own that are more hands-on. So
she was, and not to say that everyone who takes insurance is that this is one guideline, but she did take insurance. She was a referral from North Shore LIJ, and she had 15 minutes to see me, and I had a limited number of visits. And so it wasn't the same experience that our clients get.
Right. But I think there's a lot of lessons in that. But I think the biggest lesson is obviously we're two people, we don't take insurance, right? So, and the value of our services are a lot higher than if you were to get it covered by insurance and pay a copay. But at the same time, you are getting more time, more attention. You're actually getting to the root cause and what you need to heal your relationship with food and to find a plan that's sustainable for you. Mm-hmm. So it always comes down to like, you get what you pay for, and you
does.
really need to do your research and find that person that's going to help you and heal you. And that is like where you want to put like your time, your money, your energy, and your attention. And like, yeah, it's going to be a lot more money than working with someone who just, covers a copay. But very similar to my situation, well, you mentioned it, and it's true. Like through helping my and like getting healed through everything I was going through, my primary care physician was actually a specialist through my insurance, actually got one diagnosis, but the healing process and the other diagnosis was from a naturopathic physician that I spent thousands of dollars on. I was not covered by insurance. So it just goes to, and I'm healed though. If I would have kept relying on like one way or just like, and not putting the money out there, I would still be suffering. And there's no amount of money like or time or like that's worth that to me.
No.
So I hope people recognize that although we can do a lot of stuff on our own, and although we get help, like there's getting the right source of help and the right energy and attention and time working with someone than just kind of like getting a piece of paper.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right. Anything else, Alix? I feel like this is really good. I don't want to keep you for too long. I want to be mindful of your time.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. What do you think? Anything that you think might help people?
I definitely think they need to check you out on Instagram. So tell people where they can find you on Instagram, and then tell people about your course.
Sure. So I'm ALIX, so Alix with an I, Turoff _RD on Instagram. And if you follow me, definitely, and you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a DM. So I have a course, which is sort of look at it like a nutrition 101 course. It's a very unbiased look at nutrition. So going back to the basics of teaching you what a calorie is and how it works in the body, how carbs work in your body, fat and protein, and then giving you more specific guidelines and teaching you how you can almost be your own dietitian if you can't necessarily afford to work with someone one-on-one. This is, a lower priced option for you. So basically teaching you my thought process when putting together a program for someone, what goes through my mind. So lots of videos and recipes and meal ideas and shopping lists and strategies to help you, but with the focus. So I do counsel people for weight loss, but I also am very mindful and careful that I'm not putting weight loss above really mental health and overall health, and not ignoring the fact that some people have more underlying kind of a issue with how they approach food. So getting to the mindset stuff too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is really, really great. And when you do one-on-one with people, do you do macro coaching mostly?
So I use calorie and macronutrients to kind of teach people how to balance meals. And mostly it's because they're usually under eating. So to give them protein goals to hit kind of at each meal, but I don't do rigid, you have to hit this number, you have to count everything. It's a tool that I'll use in the beginning if someone has never looked at those things before. But my goal for people is to really not use that for the rest of their life and to learn how to eat more intuitively. I think that what I found with that was if I wasn't giving them any sort of structure, it would feel really, really difficult to kind of comprehend what we were doing.
Mm-hmm, totally. Yeah, I think they need some sort of guidance, but then you're working through with them the mindset stuff and the other things. I think that's good.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Alix.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. This has been great. Oh, and you have a podcast coming out, right?
Yes, and you are going to be on it.
Yay! Oh. What's the name of the podcast going to be?
It's very original. It's just Alix Turoff Nutrition Podcast.
Yep. Well, that's good. It's your name.
Exactly.
Yeah. Special enough. All right, Alix. Well, it's so great chatting with you, and I'll definitely talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right, guys, I really hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. If you have any suggestions for future episodes or topics or any follow-up questions, I know I said it in the beginning, but I seriously mean it, please don't hesitate to contact me, tipswithtony@gmail.com. I want to make sure that the information I'm putting out there, the guests that I have on here, are valuable to you, are helpful for you. If there's something that we talked about, we touched on it, but you want us to go deeper into it, let me know. I'm always happy to have guests back on. If there's a previous episode you've heard that you really enjoyed, let me know. All right, guys. So I know I said it earlier. I'm saying it again. If you have not subscribed to the Tips with Tony podcast, please subscribe, and I will talk to you soon. As always, this is Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.